Should be live, right? I think we're live. It looks like we're live. Just gonna assume we're live right now. Looks like you can hear me. I know the background's all different and everything. My wife is using the computer for her job, and that's, frankly more important than anything I'm doing. But the Bengals just fired Lou Anarumo, which I'm shocked about. I want to say, because I thought personally that he did enough. That I want to be clear. I think it's definitely probably the right move. I've been explaining for a while now. Also, apologies, by the way. I don't have my normal setup, so I can't put comments on the screen for this, but I do see your comments. So, Stranger, I see you here. Lou and Pollock need Taylor and Tobin on the list. I don't think Tobin or Taylor's jobs are at risk. I think Lou Anarumo, I think it was probably the Bengals probably made an ultimatum to Zach Taylor saying that you have to move on from Lou or we're moving on from you. That's what I said earlier in this season might happen at the end of the year. And I think the only reason it didn't happen earlier is because the Bengals somehow stayed in the playoff race. I thought that the defense did well enough against the Steelers that they wouldn't do that. But it's, again, I also don't necessarily disagree with them firing him. So it's not necessarily a bad move. The defense, honestly, the defense is the reason we missed the playoffs. I think potentially the Bengals might not have moved on from Lou Anarumo if we had magically made the playoffs. But the defense is the reason we missed. It's not, obviously not every single game was their fault. The Patriots game, that's one thing. If you just won the Patriots game, and the defense held the Patriots to 16 points, which is pretty average for playing the Patriots this year. They did a good enough job against the Chiefs in week 2, but after that, they let the Commanders score 38. They let the Panthers, of all teams, score 24. They let the Ravens score 41, and then they did a good job against the Giants. They did a good job against the Browns, but it's the Browns. And they let the Eagles drop 37. The Raiders 24 is eh. And then they let the Ravens drop 35. The Steelers 44. I know 7 of that came from Joe Burrow's scoop 6 at the end of the game. And then they, and then the Chargers 34. I can't remember if I said that or not. And then after that, the defense did get a little bit better. To be fair, the Cowboys, they gave up 20 points. The Titans, they gave up 27, which isn't great, but it was enough to get the win, right? They only gave up 6 to the Browns, but that was with DTR, and y'all know how I feel about DTR. Oh, that was terrible. But they did a good enough job against the Broncos, and they did a good enough job against the Steelers at the end to give the Bengals a chance to make the playoffs, but it didn't happen. And I think because it was again, Tanner Hudson is the reason, arguably, that we lost the Patriots game, not the defense. And then the Steelers game, the defense gave up a lot of points, but ultimately came down to Joe Burrow's scoop 6. And then the Ravens, it was directly tied to Evan McPherson. At no point can you directly tie any of these losses to single events from the defense, but you can tie it directly to the fact that the defense just couldn't stop anybody all year. Lou Anarumo's strategy didn't seem to evolve at all until the tail end of the year, and it was way too late at that point to actually, to justify taking that long to change the strategy. Yes, he simplified the defense at the end of the year, but that's not good enough. Because why did it take this long to simplify the defense when that's clearly what they needed? Yes, the defense got better when you simplified it, but if that's the case, you should have known that. And then not to mention all the lack of development from guys like Jordan Battle struggled all year, and why is the defensive coordinator not doing a better job of developing players like that? Miles Murphy has been good, but I definitely would argue he's not lived up to his first round billing. Cam Taylor-Britt regressed badly, and Lou Anarumo is a defensive backs guy. So the fact that our defensive backfield was, I would argue, the biggest weak point of the team is I think telling. Yeah, I had a buddy tell me that they fired half of their defensive staff. I haven't verified that, But I do know they fired the linebacker coach too, which makes sense because like the linebackers have definitely regressed. Jermaine Pratt is still like, a legend and does legendary things, but he also misses a lot of tackles. And I mean, obviously that's Jermaine Pratt's issue, but there's it's not only just Jermaine Pratt's issue. It's also like the other linebackers. Akeem Davis-Gaither is normally known as a very sure tackler, and even he was missing tackles kind of there down the stretch. And I guess it is what it is. Apparently, also Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, was fired, which I'm kind of disappointed by. I know the defensive line wasn't good enough this year, but we know that Marion Hobby is a really good. He built Saxonville, right? And he built our, defensive line. I believe he was the defensive line coach when we went to the Super Bowl. I can't remember. But he's really good at what he does. And this year wasn't good enough for sure. So I'm surprised that they fired him. But James Betcher, the linebacker coach, I'm not as surprised by that because the linebackers have been not all that impressive for a while now. And to confirm, Marion Hobby was the defensive coordinator in 2021 when we went to the Super Bowl. So I'm a little surprised to see they fired him. They also fired Frank Pollock, which I know a lot of y'all have been screaming for. I'm not... Okay, so to be clear, I don't necessarily disagree with anybody who got fired because heads needed to roll after the way that this season just kind of like trailed off. But I wasn't necessarily personally calling for Frank Pollock to be fired, right? Frank Pollock I felt did a better job than you should expect, really, out of most of the offensive lines that he's been handed. Got a little shot of Murphy in there. He's been... Now, this year wasn't good enough, though. This year was not good enough as far as Frank Pollock goes. You had the most talented offensive line the Bengals have had in a long time, and then you had guys like Cordell Volson and Alex Kappa regressing badly. So I understand why they fired him. I don't necessarily think it's the move I would make, but I'm also not going to, throw tables over it either. Nick, what's going on, Nick? They stayed a lot longer than I anticipated for sure. In the playoff race? Yeah. If you're talking about the guys who got fired, like, I don't know, Lou Anarumo, like, I was calling for Lou Anarumo to go last year, to be honest, but, like, that's not a very Bengals thing to fire a guy after, regressing that badly for even a second year in a row. And plus, there were still signs, I think, of, some potential there. But, a lot of people are saying, like, why is Zach still the coach? And I think Zach's still the coach because the Bengals still kind of believe in Zach. Frankly, I think the Bengals still believe in Zach. I think Joe Burrow still believes in Zach. I think, like I said, I think this was basically a warning shot to Zach. This was, hey, get rid of these guys and see what you can do. Because last time you did that, last time the Bengals fired a warning shot, the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, right? That was over Jim, whatever his name was. The old offensive line coach, Jim Turner. Yeah, they basically said, Zach, fire Jim. He's clearly awful, or we're gonna fire you. And then they did that, and the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So, for what that's worth. So, I mean, it's possible that could happen again. I don't want to say it will, but I think that's what the Bengals are kind of going for here. Like, they've put Zach under pressure before, and he's risen to the pressure when it happens. So I will say, though, if he rises to the pressure again and the Bengals get better after this, then maybe that's the strategy that they should take going forward, is putting the pressure on Zach Taylor, because it seems like things don't tend to work very well until the pressure is put on him. So we'll see how he responds to this. And if they don't make the playoffs again next year, then Zach's gone, guys. Like let's just be honest with you. Like, I know his contract is through. I forget exactly how far it's through 2026. So look, if next year's bad, they'll fire Zach. They won't give him that last year. But if they, we'll see what happens. I think if you have another year like this where they like come real close to making the playoffs and they have a strong end of the year, they probably won't fire him since he's under contract for only another year anyway. But they definitely won't rehire him after 2026 if this keeps happening. So yeah, Lou's gone, Hobby's gone, James Betcher's gone. I'm like I said, I'm pretty surprised about Hobby. I don't. I mean, I know this year's been rough as far as the defensive line goes, but you know, I did think that I think the biggest problem you had with the defensive line this year was Sam Hubbard, and yeah, maybe there's some blame there to as far as Hobby goes. Maybe there's some blame there because you know, he's a defensive line coach. You can't have guys regressing like that. But there was also a lot of talk that Hubbard was hurt, and that might have been part of why he regressed. But once they got like Joseph Osai and Miles Murphy having more reps, the defensive line got better. You know, McKinley Jackson was coming along pretty strong there at the end of the year. And, you know, I thought Chris Jenkins was pretty good this year. Maybe not as far as a pass rush goes, but, like, I mean, what the Bengals brought him in for, which was as a DJ Reader replacement. He wasn't DJ Reader, but I think he might have actually been better than DJ Reader was with the Lions this year. It was you know, I think we saw with DJ Reader on the Lions, we saw why the Bengals moved on from him because you know, all those injuries kind of piling up and everything. So it is what it is too. Stranger says, I know Taylor and Tobin aren't going, but Taylor should be gone or demoted from play calling. I don't. That's a 25 years of the Duke Tobin experience is more than enough. Well, he hasn't been the de facto GM for 25 years. Like, I mean, he's been with the Bengals for 25 years, but they didn't hire him as de facto GM. They hired him probably as like a guy to help with scouting or something like that. It's really been since 2011 since Duke's been kind of running the show. I will say though, I'm not thrilled with Duke Tobin lately. Like the way that this offseason went, like all those distractions as far as contracts go, and then just to not get anything done with anybody. You know, I will say I'll give credit to Duke if the Bengals do re-sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase this offseason, because you know he basically, if the Bengals re-sign T. Higgins, that means that he won a staring contest essentially with David Mulligetta. And he tried that with Jesse Bates and it didn't work. But if it does work with T. Higgins, you got to give him some credit for that things work out, and then, you know, maybe you don't end up paying T. Higgins, you know, buku bucks, you know, with all the injury problems he's had and everything like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not thrilled with Duke Tobin lately, but I'm not necessarily like, you know, like if they didn't fire him, then I was going to riot or anything, right? I wasn't even necessarily demanding, like with the way the defense played down the stretch, I wasn't demanding that they fire Lou anymore. I was for most of the year, but then they played better, and I'm like, okay, well, I'd still move on from him, but I'm not going to like get that mad if the Bengals don't. But they did, and I think it was the right move. So Lou definitely took too long to adjust. That's my thing. Lou, that's his biggest problem throughout his entire tenure with the Bengals, is he just took way too long to adjust to anything that was happening. It was insane. It was insane. Like why do you just keep doing the exact same thing? It's the exact same playbook with the exact same ideas and concepts, despite the fact that you have wildly different players. Like, it worked in 2021, but it didn't. It was the same playbook prior to 2021, and I mean, there might have been a few minor changes, but like the same basic way that the defense handled everything was the same throughout Lou Anarumo's entire tenure. And how do you do that? It's like he struck gold in 2021. He found the right players to run that system, but I don't understand how like you don't adjust what you're doing. I don't understand how you don't adjust what you're doing based off of the personnel that you have. It's ridiculous, honestly. So I think he deserved to be fired, and I think it's best that the Bengals moved on. I do think he did better, and I wouldn't have been too mad if they didn't fire him after the way that things got better, because it's like, well, maybe you found something that works, and if that carries over into 2025, then okay. But at the same time, there are going to be new players in 2025. Who, I don't know. It's, maybe Mike Hilton's gone, maybe B.J. Hill's gone, maybe et cetera, et cetera. And whoever replaces guys like that, it's going to be tough to see what happens. Whoever replaces guys like that, you're going to have to adjust for who the new personnel is. And Lou Anarumo has shown that he's completely unwilling to do that until it's way too late. That's why with Lou Anarumo, I'm just like, I agree that it like, you have to move on from him, despite the fact that he was really good at certain things, but at a certain point, those certain things that he was good at weren't good enough. So I totally agree with that. I'm conflicted about Frank Pollock, and I'm pretty conflicted about Marion Hobby. James Betcher, I get that one. The linebackers just generally haven't been good enough for a while. And Jermaine Pratt went through a stretch of just really kind of being useless completely, and he, near the end there, he did start to kind of make plays again, but I mean, those plays were still offset by like bad missed tackles and everything, and like the fundamentals just aren't there for the linebackers, and so I think I agree with James Betcher. But Frank Pollock and Marion Hobby, I'm a little conflicted on, but I also I get it with Frank. I don't get it with Marion Hobby though. That one's weird to me. But maybe they had to. Maybe that was like Lou's boy, and like Marion. Maybe Marion Hobby wasn't into the idea of going out there and doing it without Lou. Or maybe he didn't think that Lou deserved to be fired or something. I don't know. But I don't know if moving on from Marion Hobby was the right move. But I do think that moving on from Lou was the right move, and I get it with Frank. And I totally agree with James Betcher. That Betcher and Lou probably needed to go. But yeah, this isn't going to be a super long stream, guys. I'm just... I wanted to get something out. I don't have access to my full studio right now, so I, got to go live. But I'll catch up with these comments. What I am going to do is I'm going to put out a video at some point, hopefully today, but it might, be out tomorrow. Probably be out tomorrow. But I'll try to work on it today. But a video about the... about who should replace Lou as defensive coordinator. I've got some ideas. The guy from the Lions, I really like, Aaron Glenn. Brian Flores, if you can get him, would be pretty good. I'll have this all researched and everything and put out. But right now I'll just catch up with these comments and sign off. Lou definitely took too long to adjust. Yeah, I agree. Marion Hobby gone too. It is what it is. The number one person who isn't gone but should be is Duke Tobin. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not thrilled with Duke lately, but he's been director of player personnel since he was hired in '99. Yeah, but he didn't have the same power in '99. Like you got to understand, 2011 was really kind of when the whole structure of the Bengals started changing. Duke Tobin was not responsible for anything that really happened. Like, Mike Brown was like the guy in charge, and it was his team, and his decisions, and it was Mike Brown was the dictator of the Bengals prior to 2011, and I mean, even after 2011, he was the primary decision maker and everything like that. But 2011, like post Carson Palmer, is when things kind of started to like Katie Blackburn and Troy, and probably more power to Duke and stuff like that. The Bengals didn't Duke did not have that kind of power back in 1999. Let's just put it that way. 2011 was just the title. Lippincott was in charge of drafting to 2010. That's kind of what I'm saying. It was like nobody on the team was drafted pre-2011. Nobody. Well, yeah, obviously. 2011 was 14 years ago. Like, I don't know anybody who's hardly any players in all of NFL history play for 14 years. Like, of course, nobody on the team was drafted pre-2011. Although Andy Dalton was drafted in 2011, he's still in the NFL. To be fair, he's not on the Bengals, but I'm not complaining about that. Like, why would he be on the Bengals when we had the opportunity to draft Joe Burrow, and he's frankly good enough to be a spot starter in the NFL, and really I would argue Andy Dalton might still be good enough to be just a general starter in the NFL. Not like he was back in the day. Like, back in the day, he was like a top top 12 quarterback, top 15, 12, 15 quarterback, I'd say, consistently in the NFL. And it's like, he was the kind of guy, it's like, it's not like he's not necessarily good enough, but you'd hate to not have him. Now, he's more of like, a good spot starter. But, that's good enough for a lot of teams. So, anyway, I've been going for about 20 minutes here and taking up my family's living room space, so I am going to hop off. But I will come out with a defensive coordinator video as soon as I have the ability. Probably will come out tomorrow, but I'll probably try to work on it like tonight or something like that. But anyway, I appreciate the all 8 concurrent viewers, 23 people who have viewed this thing so far. And yeah, it's going to be a new era for the Bengals defense at the very least. Might even be a new era, really, because like Zach doesn't hardly do anything with the defense. He's basically a glorified offensive coordinator, Current personnel is all on Tobin, completely, entirely. Good and bad, but there's not enough good and too much bad. That's all on Tobin. Yeah, well, they went to the Super Bowl, and you got to give Tobin credit for building the team that went to the Super Bowl. But I agree, Duke Tobin has, definitely caused a lot of, like, longevity problems. Like, the Bengals get these windows because Duke Tobin, like, can sometimes do something crazy, like do some really good moves and get on, like, a really good hot streak. But he doesn't preserve that hot streak, and he's really... I find Duke Tobin is really frustrating when it comes to... keeping the players around who really need to be kept around. Like, they do a really good job with quarterbacks, but, and sometimes they do a good job with wide receivers. But, like, when it comes to, like, guys like Andrew Whitworth, DJ Reader, arguably, Justin Smith back in the day, like, I don't know how much power Duke had at that time. But, like guys who were just really anchors of, certain aspects of the team that the Bengals don't seem to value as much as they should, that you've got to find ways to keep these guys around. And I find too often that Duke Tobin's willing to let them walk when they don't have a good plan to replace them. It's what my fear is with T. Higgins. Like, T. Higgins, yes, the number 2 wide receiver, but he makes such an impact on this team, and they have not shown me that. I mean, especially with, like, the disaster that's been Jermaine Burton this year. They have not shown me that if they do move on from T. Higgins, that they'd be able to replace him, So, like, I mean, I know Yoshi's pretty good, but he's no T. Higgins. So, yeah. But anyway, I'm going to sign off, guys. Lou Anarumo's gone. I view that as largely a good thing. I didn't think it would happen, but it did happen. But, yeah, it looks like Zach's sticking around, but... had a few people getting fired, and it's probably necessary for the results we had. So, yeah, y'all can always catch more of what I do at Kyle Phelps 92 on Twitter and TikTok and Blue Sky. Something weird happened with my TikTok account. I think they deactivated it, but I wasn't really using it, to be fair. So, I mean, I made a new one, and I think it's still Kyle Phelps 92. So, I'll try to do more TikTok stuff. I don't know. Maybe that gets deactivated again over stupid stuff. But, yeah, y'all can always catch more of what I do there. Battle of Ohio podcast, we'll see. Me and Mikey going live later today around 4 p.m. For a power ranking show. And, that'll be what it's going to be. But anyway, I'll leave y'all, as always, with a hootie!